So you guys may have noticed, the folks that do what I do, they have a weakness for coming up with awards for their favorite cars or top 10 lists of the best baby buggies out there. I don't do that. Instead, I compile one list, and it's very simple. Cars I would personally write a check for. No, not finance, not lease, meaning I like the car so much I would pull greenbacks out of the bank, hand it over to the OEM, and I would take the car in return. Now, I have been guilty in the past of putting a practical vehicle on that list, the E63 S-Wagon, that has one slight problem. It's 130 grand. So perhaps we should look at something also practical, but not quite as expensive. For the avoidance of doubt, that is not a full-fat AMG, rather it's a middle-of-the-road AMG. Difference being, the engine is not constructed of frankincense and myrrh by hand, rather it is shared with serial production Mercedes Benz vehicles like the GLB 250 on which this is based. However, in this case, the output's significantly different. 302 horsepower, that is up 81 horsepower over the GLB 250. The torque is also up 295 pound-feet. And that's great and all, but how do they arrive at those output figures? Well, they change a couple of things, like for example, the construction goes from a crankcase that's steel to die-cast aluminum. The turbocharger is larger, and they also change some of the programming. Like for example, there's like a pseudo launch control, they call it race start, and then they support that output with some AMG things around the vehicle. Like for example, there is a brace connecting the two strut towers to increase the structural rigidity of the vehicle. Now you will notice it is transversely mounted, which means it is more of a front-wheel drive based vehicle. However, unlike the GLB 250, this is only on offer as all-wheel drive and is connected to all four wheels through an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. Now, it is a baby buggy, which means fuel economy is still a thing even though it says AMG on it. 21, 26, 23 combined, and then performance figures. Big step up from the GLB 250, 5.1 seconds to 60, and VMAX 155 miles an hour. So I have a bit of a surprise for you today. Yes, this is a German SUV, although it's not made in Germany. And as such, it does not weigh 5,000 pounds, 3,869 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,755 kilograms. With that. And there's a little bit of a delay there, but oh, does it wake up. That is its Sport Plus. It doesn't have quite the edge that the CLA 45 had that we drove. Now granted, it's a bit of a different engine. The output's different. It comes in about 2,500 RPM and pulls really well all the way to 5,500 RPM. This is an unusually good package in the GLB. I would argue this engine works significantly better in this package. Then there's the transmission. We've driven many of these dual clutch transmissions from Mercedes, and I would argue they transform the personality of these cars. Not that it's not a Mercedes, it just makes it sharper, but a huge hinvice here. It's not as sharp as the transmission of, I know you're going to kill me on this one, as in the Hyundai and the Kia, that 8-speed dual clutch that we've driven in Kia, K5, Hyundai Sonata, N-Line, and recently the Veloster N. Here it doesn't have those mechanical shifts, and I like those mechanical shifts in this kind of a transmission. One aspect that jumps out at you immediately in this thing is the high intervention rate of the safety doodads, like the stability control. When you get into turns like this, the system, it just wants to err on the side of caution because it realizes it's a baby buggy, even one with a sort of AMG engine. It's a bit too much for me, even in Sport Plus mode. I could understand in Sport or Comfort mode, but when we get into this level of where we're trying to push it aggressively, at least telling the computer I want to push the thing aggressively, it should give me a little bit more leash to be able to do that. So in picking up the theme of a middle-of-the-road AMG, the GLB 250 serves as a foundation to create a GLB 35. But from there, the engineers do a couple of things to make it more of a performance crossover, if there is such a thing. Like for example, in the rear they change out the subframe, in the front they change out the control arms, and they change a bunch of other suspension bits. But the biggest thing you and I have to focus on is the multi-plate clutch that sends the torque either to the front of the vehicle or the back of the vehicle. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, it can send up to 50% of the torque to the front or up to 50% of the torque to the rear. But what's different about the AMG specific clutch in an AMG GLB 35 is different parameters of information it's looking at. Like, for example, the speed of the vehicle, the steering wheel angle, the lateral acceleration, the gear position, as well as the differences in the rotational speeds of the wheels from side to side. So I totally get it here. This is something that is designed to be entirely practical. However, it is something also of many different personalities. In the most basic mode, driving it on regular roads, it drives like a GLB 250, meaning it's a little soft, it drives like a front wheel drive kind of crossover thing should drive. It doesn't really feel like an AMG on basic roads. The steering is a bit too light. There's just too much, forget about pitch, squat, dive, and roll, there's too much waft to the vehicle as you're driving it, even aggressively in traffic. However, switch it to the Sport Plus mode. Forget about Sport, doesn't make a huge difference. Sport Plus, this is kind of impressive. Like, it completely transformed the vehicle. When I first drove it off the airport grounds, I was like, the GLB 250, I liked it for someone who wants something practical, but it's not my cup of tea. This is downright fun to drive. Even a tall vehicle, and the combination of the tall vehicle but a shorter wheelbase, you would think it wouldn't do well out here. Surprising how well it could do here. And then there's the steering in this mode, and this is the biggest surprise of the GLB 35. You guys know I've been somewhat critical of the weight of the steering. Even in full-fat AMGs, it's just been too light for me. This is a better mix. There's good weight, it's not perfect, it's direct, there's good feedback. I mean, keep in mind, this is a front-wheel drive based kind of crossover thing, so it's not going to be like an E63 wagon, but for what it is incredibly impressive. Then there are the brakes, and here the GLB 35 is blessed with larger diameter rotors, 13.6 in the front, 13 in the rear, and it's not exactly like a carbon ceramic set of rotors on an E63 wagon, but it drastically cleans up the braking from the GLB 250. The brake power is good, it's direct, and there's good pedal modulation. It's not perfect, again, for the vehicle that it is, a family crossover, but also ride quality. That's the thing I thought would be really choppy and just not supple, which a Mercedes like this should be, because it's not exactly a basic Mercedes and it's not a full-fat AMG, so it should be kind of Goldilocks where you don't disturb your occupants. But then this one turned up and it's fitted with the larger optional 21-inch wheels, which usually it's like dropping an atomic bomb on the ride quality, and here it doesn't, even with low-profile tires. However, one provision to that, I've only driven this thing in Southern California. The road's not great, but not terrible. My thinking is this wheel and tire combination would not do so well in the city streets of New York, or perhaps even London. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Options game, with today's contestant, a design of a practical vehicle from Mercedes that I prefer over the design of the GLA, even though they're based on the same platform. This one, a hotter version, the 2021 Mercedes AMG GLB 35, say that fast 5 times, $49,500. And then we had the color. Now, what was it? Just last week, I was telling you in an Audi episode that dark metallic blue with aluminum trim on a German vehicle would look wunderbar, and here I am proving my point. This one is even cheaper because the paint is only $720. I would say that's money well spent. Then we press onto the interior, and believe it or not, it actually looks pretty good with this color. Even though it's mostly black, there is a Neva gray trim. It works well. Me, I'd probably go with the saddle, but this works, and you don't have to pay extra for it. Then we press on to something we do have to pay extra for. This car says AMG on it. However, if you want an AMG steering wheel, you have to pay an additional $400. I'm confused. Then we press on to wheels of a different sort, and here I feel it prudent to point out that 19-inch wheels are fitted as standard. However, if one wanted to specify larger 21-inch wheels, which do look magnificent, they would be an additional $1,750. Then we have to go back to the steering wheel we already paid extra for. If we want the AMG buttons on the steering wheel, meaning on either side of the steering wheel that control the drive unit as well as which mode you're in, like an E63 wagon, that's an additional $400. I'm still confused. Then we press on to the Sirius XM radio. I was mad about this in the GLB 250. Why am I paying an extra $460 for satellite radio in a $50,000 car? Let's fix that. Then the mirror logo projector. I'm a sucker for these things, and yes, I will pay an extra $110 for that. Then the heated front seats, very usable even in California, $500. Then the cheapest option that is on offer from all of Mercedes Benz, a USB-C cable for $25. Then the multimedia package. And this is not only navigation, it's the augmented reality to the navigation. Very cool, highly suggested at $1,295. Then the premium package. This is the keyless go, the auto dimming mirror, both the rear view mirror as well as the driver's mirror, and then the folding mirrors, $800. I don't know if I'm angry about that being optional on a $50,000 car. I'll come back to you on this. Then the only other thing we have to add is the destination and handling from Aguascalientes, Mexico, $1,050, for a total retail price of $57,010. Aside from what you and I have discussed this far, what makes a GLB 35 a GLB 35? Well, shocker of shockers, there are some aesthetics that go into it, yet the big thing that changes with a GLB 35 is this stunning brushed aluminum trim throughout the exterior of the vehicle. Even on the rear of the vehicle, diffuser changes, it really makes the vehicle stand out. Even a small baby buggy kind of crossover thing, then obviously the grille changes, but this, it's all about the color one selects. I do not think this would look very good in like a white, a silver, or even a black. It's a blue or like a burgundy or a red. Really high contrast colors would make all of that trim change work. I like this, but would I personally write a check for it? No. Why? Because it's a crossover, and I don't like crossovers, and I also have all the practicality of a 3-year-old. That said, I do prefer this over the GLB 250, and not for the obvious reasons, rather from a value perspective. If you look at real transaction prices of GLB 250s, basic price, plus some of the options you're seeing on the ones you see on the road, they're close to the base price of this. And I would always suggest that one would go for the cheap seats in the good neighborhood as opposed to the very fancy seats in the crappy neighborhood, which brings us to the wish list. And here, I'm probably not going to surprise you. I would love to see this package with some sort of 48-volt electrification. Whether that's an electric motor in the rear, driving the rear wheels, and giving us some sort of EV range and making it a little bit more sporty, or just making it more efficient with more instantaneous torque and without that nasty, some sort of safety system that intrudes far too much. That, I think, would make this quite a package that would be hard to beat. Outside of that, the only other thing I would add to the wish list is please, oh please, oh please, Mercedes, this isn't just this vehicle. You have this wonderful screen that people pay extra for. Can we take up all of the real estate for the Apple CarPlay? Because this thing, taking it up in the center, it's not a good look. Fix it on everything, even the E63 S-Wagon. And with that, I turn this around to you to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I do want to leave you with one last thing. I told you so about the blue with the aluminum trim. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.